vast, endless sky, where thousands of steel birds travel safely from one point to another every single day. Sometimes, fate has other plans. Sometimes, a routine flight becomes a mystery that leaves the world speechless. An enigma in sky. An endless riddle. March 2014. An ordinary night over the Indian Ocean. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. 239 people, passengers and crew, each with their own dreams, their own hopes, their own stories. For them, it was just another flight. But soon, it would become a journey with no return. In a matter of minutes, it vanished from radar. No distress call, no warning, no trace. It was as if the night itself had swallowed it whole. This wasn't just a missing plane. It was 239 missing lives. And it triggered one of the largest search operations in history. An operation that would ultimately find nothing. So what secret lies buried in the depths of the ocean? Was it human error, a catastrophic mechanical failure, or something far darker and more sinister? Here at Davincifer, we're searching for the final answer. Welcome to The Vanished, the unsolved mystery of Flight MH370. The night of March 8th, 2014, 12:42 a.m. local time. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 lifts off the runway at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The destination, Beijing, China. A routine 6-hour flight over the calm waters of the South China Sea. At the controls of the modern, reliable Boeing 777 was Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a seasoned veteran with over 18,000 hours in the sky, and his co-pilot, Farik Abdul Hamid, a young but promising first officer. A flight crew of 12 was also on board, ready to serve the passengers. On board were 227 passengers from 14 different nations, families going on vacation, business travelers closing deals, students returning home, and couples looking for adventure. Among them was a group of renowned Chinese artists, heading home after an art exhibition in Kuala Lumpur. Each one had a story, a destiny waiting. No one knew that this flight, just a few hours later, would write their names into history forever, as part of an unsolved mystery. For a few minutes, everything was normal. The plane was climbing to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, tracking northeast towards Vietnamese airspace, right on schedule. But this calm was the prelude to a storm of confusion and questions that, to this day, have no answers. At 1:19 a.m., about 38 minutes after takeoff, Flight MH370 was leaving Malaysian airspace and entering Vietnamese airspace. It was a routine handover. Malaysian air traffic control told the pilots to check in with their counterparts in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. The last voice communication from the cockpit came from co-pilot Farik Abdul Hamid, who calmly said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. That sentence, which sounded like a standard sign-off, would be the last known words ever transmitted from Flight MH370. Just 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., something inexplicable happened. The plane's transponder, the device that broadcasts its position and altitude to civilian radar, was switched off. Suddenly, MH370 vanished from civilian radar screens, as if it had been wiped from existence. No warning, no distress call. Just absolute silence. At first, it was assumed to be a simple technical glitch, a radio failure. Vietnamese air traffic controllers tried to contact MH370. The Malaysians tried too, but they got no response. Concern quickly escalated to alarm. A Boeing 777, with 239 people on board, can't just disappear. But military radar told a very different story. Unaffected by the silent transponder, the military data showed that MH370 hadn't vanished at all. Instead, it had drastically changed its course, Instead of continuing northeast, the plane made a hard turn west, then southwest, flying deep out into the Indian Ocean. This mysterious deviation turned the MH370 case from a potential accident into one of the most complex and terrifying mysteries in aviation history. As the sun rose on the morning of March 8th, the true scale of the disaster became terrifyingly clear. Not only was MH370 gone from the radar, there were no messages, no wreckage, no trace of it anywhere. This kicked off one of the largest and most expensive search and rescue operations in history, pulling in dozens of countries. At first, the search was focused on the South China Sea, right where the plane was last spotted on civilian radar. Search teams from Malaysia, Vietnam, China, the United States, and a dozen other nations scoured the ocean with ships, planes, and submarines. But the rough seas and crushing depths made the task almost impossible. And it soon became clear they were looking in the completely wrong place. The military radar data revealed a shocking truth. After the transponder went dark, MH370 had made a hard turn west, flying back across the Malay Peninsula. From there, it flew south, deep into the Indian Ocean. This single piece of information changed everything, forcing the entire search operation to move thousands of kilometers away. The new search zone was called the Seventh Arc, a massive, uncharted stretch of the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most remote and violent places on Earth. We're talking about waters over 4,000 meters deep, with powerful, unpredictable currents. In total, millions of square kilometers of ocean were searched, an area the size of a continent. Finding a needle in a haystack would have been easier. As days turned into weeks, hope began to fade into despair. Families kept a desperate vigil at airports, waiting for any piece of news. But the only news that came was that there was no news. No pings from the black box, not a single piece of wreckage. Just the crushing silence of the ocean and its dark secrets. The operation didn't just burn through immense resources and money. It took a heavy psychological toll on the families and the search crews themselves. Flight MH370 had become a ghost. A phantom plane we all knew was real, but that had left no trace of its existence behind. While the massive search in the vast Indian Ocean was hitting a dead end, a glimmer of hope came from a completely unexpected place, the satellites. It seemed like MH370 had gone completely dark after disappearing from civilian radar, but one specific communication system, designed for operational and maintenance data, was telling a very different story. This system was automatically sending out a ping once every hour to a satellite owned by the British company, Inmarsat. These pings were basically small, empty electronic signals. They were just a handshake, a way of saying the plane was still powered on and trying to connect to the satellite network. They didn't contain any GPS location data, but they held the key to unlocking the plane's final path. Using the 7 pings that were transmitted after the last voice contact, all the way up to 8:19 in the morning, engineers from Inmarsat and the UK's Air Accident Investigation Branch pulled off a masterpiece of data analysis. By calculating the time it took for each ping to reach the satellite and its angle, they were able to plot a series of possible arcs on a map. These arcs, which became known as the Seventh Arc, represented all the possible locations the plane could have been when it sent its final ping. This complex analysis proved it. After its initial turn, the aircraft had continued to fly for several more hours, heading south into the Indian Ocean. These findings not only drastically shifted the search area, but they also confirmed the theory that the plane crashed in an incredibly remote region. The ping data also suggested the plane's speed and altitude had changed during its final hours, adding another layer of mystery to the case. The role of this satellite data was absolutely vital. Without it, the potential crash zone was so enormous that a meaningful search would have been impossible. These pings were the only concrete clues, the only glimpse into the phantom flight of MH370, a silent journey over an endless ocean. But even with this invaluable information, the ultimate question remained. Who flew this plane to its grim fate and why? With the unprecedented disappearance of MH370, and with no main wreckage ever found, a massive information vacuum was created. A void that was quickly filled with a flood of theories and speculation, from the logical to the downright bizarre. The world was desperate for an answer, and everyone had a theory. One of the first and most common theories was a catastrophic mechanical or electrical failure. The idea was that a fire, a massive system malfunction, or even an explosion on board quickly disabled everything and sent the plane spiraling out of control. And while the Boeing 777 has an incredible safety record, no plane is invincible. However, the complete lack of any distress call or any attempt at an emergency landing made this theory a tough sell. Why didn't the pilots have time for even a single short message? Another theory quickly gained traction, and it was a heavy one. Human intervention, pilot suicide. According to this hypothesis, one of the pilots, or maybe both, deliberately turned off the transponder, changed the plane's course, and flew it on a one-way trip into the ocean. The discovery of a similar flight path, plotted on Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's home flight simulator, only added fuel to this fire. A motive was never found, but this remains the darkest and most personal explanation for the tragedy. But what if the plane was hijacked? This theory, while it seemed less likely, never fully went away. A hijacking by terrorists or some other unknown group could explain the course change and the disabled systems, but it leads to a dead end. No one ever made any demands. No one ever claimed responsibility. Why go to the trouble of hijacking a plane if you never tell the world what you want? And beyond these, even stranger theories began to surface. Everything from a mid-air collision with an unknown object, to government conspiracies to hide the truth, or even alien intervention. Some believed MH370 was shot down by a secret military power to stop a sensitive piece of technology from falling into the wrong hands. And while these theories often had little to no evidence, they showed just how desperate people were to find any explanation for this impossible mystery. The reality is, every single theory had its strengths and its weaknesses. Without the black box, without the main wreckage, it's impossible to prove or disprove any of them. MH370 became a blank canvas for the world's collective imagination, a mystery where anyone could paint their own scenario. But the truth remains hidden in the dark depths of the ocean. Years after MH370 vanished, just as all hope of ever finding the main wreckage had nearly faded to nothing, something happened. Something that reignited a flicker of hope. In July 2015, more than a year and a half after the crash, a large piece of an airplane's wing, known as a flaperon, washed ashore on Réunion Island thousands of kilometers from the original search zone. The discovery sent a shockwave around the globe. It was immediately confirmed to be from a Boeing 777, and with near certainty, it belonged to flight MH370. Analysis showed that ocean currents had carried the piece on a long, slow journey across the Indian Ocean to the island. The flaperon, while not the main wreckage, was the final, undeniable proof the plane had indeed gone down somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. After that, more pieces began to appear, washing up on the shores of Madagascar, Tanzania, and Mozambique. These fragments included parts of the wing, an engine cowling, and pieces from inside the cabin. Each find was carefully examined by experts who analyzed the fracture patterns and erosion. This gave them valuable clues about how the plane might have hit the water and broken apart, but it never got them any closer to the primary crash site. What was remarkable was the condition of the debris. The salt water and rocks had worn them down, but their core structure was intact. It was clear they had been carried by powerful ocean currents, floating for years, adrift in the vastness. And while these pieces proved that MH370 did, in fact, crash into the ocean, they could never answer the biggest questions. Why? And how? They were clues to the plane's final moments, but not the cause. Despite all the effort, these small fragments remain nothing more than bitter reminders of a massive tragedy and an unsolved mystery, still sleeping in the dark depths of the ocean. The disappearance of Flight MH370 wasn't just a human tragedy. It exposed critical weaknesses and gaping holes in global aviation systems. The incident was a brutal wake-up call for the entire industry, forcing a complete overhaul of its safety and tracking protocols. One of the biggest failures was the inability to continuously track aircraft over remote areas. Despite all our technology, it became clear that a modern jetliner could fly for hours in a complete radar black hole without broadcasting any continuous location data. This forced international aviation organizations, like the ICAO, to mandate new rules, tracking every 15 minutes and eventually once every single minute during an emergency. Another hard lesson was the need to improve black box technology. The current flight data and cockpit voice recorders have underwater pingers, but they only transmit a signal for about 30 days. In the case of MH370, that time ran out far too quickly, the signal swallowed by the immense ocean. This has led to calls for longer-lasting batteries and even developing new technologies to stream critical flight data to the cloud in real time. The disaster also highlighted the critical importance of international cooperation in search and rescue operations. No single country has the resources to cover such a massive area. Coordinating between dozens of governments, navies, and agencies, while challenging, was absolutely essential. From a human perspective, the tragedy left a profound and lasting impact on the victims' families. They didn't just lose their loved ones. They were denied the closure of a definitive answer. The uncertainty placed an unbearable psychological weight on their shoulders, turning the MH370 case into a wound that can never truly heal. The incident also served as a stark warning, a call to pay closer attention to the mental health of flight crews, and to create systems that can identify any potential issues that might jeopardize a flight safety. In the end, MH370 reminded us that for all our scientific and engineering achievements, we are still vulnerable to the forces of nature and the great unknown. The plane became a symbol of the limits of our knowledge and the terrifying complexities of the modern world. Nearly a decade has passed since that fateful night in March 2014. Despite years of relentless searching, countless millions spent, and the most detailed analysis of satellite data, Flight MH370 remains a sealed mystery. It is one of the greatest and most terrifying enigmas of the modern age, a sophisticated airliner, with 239 people on board, that simply vanished into the vastness of the ocean. Not a single theory, from mechanical failure to human intervention, has ever been proven. The few pieces of wreckage ever found only confirmed that the plane went down. They never answered the why or the how. The black boxes, the keys that could unlock this entire puzzle, remain hidden in the dark depths of the Indian Ocean. For the families of the passengers and crew, this endless waiting has become an ongoing torment. They didn't just lose their loved ones, they were robbed of the truth of what happened. This crushing uncertainty has made it impossible for their wounds to heal, to find any sense of closure. Flight MH370 is a painful reminder, a reminder of human vulnerability in the face of the unknown and the limits of our own technology. A reminder that even in our world of big data and constant surveillance, something so massive can still disappear without a trace. The incident taught the aviation industry vital lessons, leading to changes in tracking and safety protocols, but none of that can bring back the souls lost on that flight. Now it's your turn to decode. What is your theory on the final fate of Flight MH370? Is the key to the entire mystery hidden in that first deliberate turn-off course? Can you find this lost cipher? Share your theory with us in the comment section. Your insights are a crucial part of the Davincifer investigation. Don't forget to subscribe to Davincifer and hit the bell so you never miss another dark mystery. Remember, the final cipher is always waiting somewhere to be discovered.
It's all about humanity.